Okay, so we're going to start by establishing which band overall the learner is on, or rather the sample of the learner is on, because obviously we do not have access to more samples and more evidence from the learner. Okay, so what you can see here is that I have a page from secondary writing. We've got the bands on top, and we are going to try and establish which of these bands it is that this learner's sample is on. Okay, so let's start from band A, demonstrating competence in managing basic, simple and isolated phrases. Okay, let's look at our sample here. So we've got a short text. What you will notice very quickly is that there are sentences here. They are in past simple tense. We've got today morning I brushed, then I ate, I drank, I wore, I went, I paid. What we can see very, very quickly is that they are sentences. They are full sentences. There are very few spelling errors as such. Now, because they are sentences, if we look at the wording of the descriptor for band A, demonstrating competence in managing basic, simple and isolated phrases. Well, obviously, in the sample, it's much more than that. They're not isolated phrases, they are full sentences. So it's definitely higher than band A. Okay, band B then. Demonstrating competence in producing simple sentences and paragraphs on familiar topics, conforming to taught content and expectations. Okay, let us see if this is what it could be. So let's look at the sample again. They are all sentences. Today morning I brushed my teeth, then I ate my breakfast, I drank coffee, I wore my uniform. There's even some attempts here at producing something a little bit longer. After I got off the bus, I went to the shop and I bought a drink, prime and donut. So actually this is a longer sentence, but nonetheless most of these sentences are relatively simple. So if we go back to our descriptors, the learner does produce simple sentences. There are no paragraphs, but it's likely conforming to taught content and expectations. And it's certainly a familiar topic because the learner is writing about their day. So it seems like it could be band B. Now, if you want to be absolutely sure that it is, and it's not something higher up, look at the next one. Demonstrating competence in describing and narrating personal experience, that is what we are dealing with, but with greater accuracy and beginning to experiment with more sophisticated writing in a variety of genres and different curriculum contexts. Now, we don't know about a variety of genres because we only have one sample here, and we certainly do not know, for the same reason, about the different curriculum contexts. However, we do know that there are no experiments with more sophisticated writing. If we look at this again, this is all in past simple. They are basically subject, verb, objects, sentences only. That is to say, I wore what, my uniform, I went where, the bus stop, I paid what, money, and so on and so forth. Very, very simple sentences. We also can see that actually there is not much, if anything, in the way of the adjectives. So we just simply have basically subject, verbs, and then some nouns, and that's about it. So that tells us that it is not band C, and so therefore we have established that this sample is on band B for writing. Okay, now let's have a look at the individual descriptors to try and establish what the learner can do within band B. So let's start from the top. Can form and reproduce most English letters in familiar clusters of letters in frequently encountered words without support. Very important. But as we can see, obviously that's the case. I don't think we need to be looking again for this at the text to understand that yes, absolutely the learner can do that. So let's highlight this. Number 2. can use basic punctuation accurately for various purposes. For example, commas to separate ideas, capitals to start a sentence, full stops to conclude sentences. Well, let's have a look if we've got full stops and commas. And the answer to that question is yes, we do. We've got one here, one here, one here, and we've got also some commas in here as well. So it is looking like, based on this one sample, that the punctuation is used. Certainly on the basis of the sample, it is looking rather good, so we are going to mark this as fulfilled. Okay, we're going to now move to descriptor 3. Can use everyday vocabulary and phrases and start to experiment with common classroom expression and terms like I set up the experiment, we found the answer. These are the sentences of which I was talking about before: subject, verb and object. So we can see that sentences such as I set up the experiment, if we look at the actual sample, are kind of reflected. It's the same structure. I wore my uniform, I paid money, I got off the bus, I went to the shop, and so on. So actually we have a lot of evidence that this kind of structure is there. There's a lot of vocabulary around personal experiences, the daily routines kind of language. So I would suggest that is likely to be able to do this. Of course, with the if you had this learner in your actual classroom, you would have more information to go on. Okay, next, can follow and reproduce examples of text format and layout for subjects across the curriculum. Well, we simply don't know from this. If we look again, we do have the title on top, but that might be a little bit too little to justify marking this descriptor as fulfilled. So I think we simply do not know whether the learner is fulfilling this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark this in blue to suggest that we simply do not know. Okay. Okay. Descriptor 5 can show some awareness of the differences between formal and informal language by writing still has features of everyday spoken language. Let's have a look at the this is a very, very basic text, and it is quite informal, of course, because it's about personal experience. So there's no reason here to use formal language. Therefore, again, we don't quite know whether this is the case. And so I would use the blue color again on this. The language is not quite spoken in the sense that the descriptor is suggesting here. There's no command, you know, or any such language, but there is also no formal one, and because there's no reason for it, I would suggest that we leave this descriptor for now. Okay. The next one, however, is quite interesting because it says can show awareness of the range of meanings of tenses, but may tend to use the same tense for different situations. Now, so, for example, simple present tense for both present and past events. Now, this text is only about past situations. So yes, the same tense is used. However, what I would suggest is that whilst we wouldn't expect the learner here to start using present tenses, for example, or future tenses, because they are talking about what they did this morning. However, you could imagine here, rather than saying today morning I brushed my teeth, was I was brushing my teeth. So we could have past continuous, past progressive tense being used here, but we do not. There are no attempts to try anything else. So what I would suggest is that we could mark this as this is not done quite yet, because there's simply no attempts at all of trying anything else. So the awareness doesn't seem to be there. There's not even a single case where the learner would have tried to use that. So what I'm going to do is mark this in red, and this might just be the target. This is not something that is fully done quite yet. Now, can construct sentences independently, but might seek help or require modeling. Now, this is very, very likely to be the case. So it's clearly true, if you look at the sentences, that they were crafted by the learner, and on the assumption that this sample has been done without any support from the teacher, then yes, you can do this, but obviously would need support and modeling at this stage. So we are going to mark this as complete. So we've got 3 more in this band. Is starting to combine sentences to produce paragraphs in relation to the past experience or immediate environment. Now, obviously, the text is about past experience and immediate environment. We can say that that's definitely true. Is the learner starting to combine sentences to produce paragraphs? The answer to that question is no. There's no paragraph here. So while there are some attempts here to actually do combined sentences. After I got off the bus, I went to the shop, so that is definitely true, but the learner is not trying to create paragraphs, which means that this descriptor is partially done, but not fully, which means, again, it could be our area to develop. So I'm going to mark this again in red to suggest that this can be potentially a language target. We've got 2 left to look at. Can write simple, on-task and cohesive paragraphs? Again, no, because well, there's no paragraphs. So after some rehearsals with class or peers, there's no attempt based on this sample. I repeat, there might be other cases where that's possible. We just simply do not know based on this sample, and so I'm going to also put this in red. And finally, we've got 10. Can begin to write meaningful sentences and paragraphs which reflect taught content in subjects across the curriculum. Now, based on the sample, this is not something that we can actually say, because, well, certainly the sentences are meaningful, but there's no paragraphs, but largely this is just from one subject, and it is not on the topic of the curriculum. It's a personal experience, but we just simply do not know. And please note that it says subjects, plural, across the curriculum, and we simply do not know based on what we have here. So what I'm going to do, just like we did before, we do not have knowledge about this, so I'm going to mark this as unknown. Okay, so if we go back up, we see that there's a few at the beginning of Band B. Some of them we simply cannot tell, and then fewer and fewer are done as we get closer to the end of Band B. So what that suggests is that quite likely it is the case that the learner is operating on securely on low Band B, but that higher Band B is not quite there yet. If you look at the beginning of Band C and you start and you see what kind of things are expected here at low Band C, you can sort of reassure yourself that the learner is definitely not on Band C. Can use cohesive devices to link within and between paragraphs, but however there is some, but it's only one case, and it's not enough. We would expect more here because it's meant to be more sophisticated writing. And if we go back to our text, after I got off the bus, I went to the shop, and after I arrived, please note that this is the same word used twice, the same one, after and after, which suggests that there's not a lot of vocabulary that the learner has at his disposal, and therefore it is not sophisticated writing at all. Can use a variety of tenses? Well, definitely not. We know that there's only past simple tense used there. And if we look at 3, connect simple sentences into an on-task passage and incorporate information from different sources. That obviously wouldn't apply to this. And so, but if we look at the first 3, the learner is not doing them at all yet. So That means that now we are in the position to look at potential language targets for them. So of course, the areas that the learner can do are in this sort of yellowy orange color. These we don't know. So now we've got 3 that we've marked in red, which are potential areas for development. So show awareness of a range meanings of tenses, but may use the same tense. And then 8 and 9 are in fact about producing paragraphs, cohesive paragraphs in 9, and combining sentences to produce paragraphs. So what we might do is to pick 2 rather than 3. 2 is more achievable than 3, and work on those. So can show awareness of the range meaning of tenses, but may use the same tense for different situations. So we could work on this, and then secondly, produce paragraphs in relation to their past experience. Now, although descriptor 9 is actually also about paragraphs, and also about familiar topics. However, it does say cohesive paragraph, which suggests a higher level of the ability of using paragraphs. At the moment, the learner is not actually using any paragraphs whatsoever. So what I would suggest that our targets are going to be, and let me just draw and circle these, B6 and B8. And so now we are going to talk right at the end what kind of strategies we could think of to address these targets in the classroom, how to support the learner towards the achievement of these targets. Let's look at B6 first. Can show awareness of the range of meanings of tenses, but may tend to use the same tense for different situations. So what we want to do is for this learner to develop an understanding of a difference between past simple, the regular past simple that the learner seems to be already be able to use relatively well. But as I said before, there's no other versions such as past progressive. So I was brushing, I was eating, I was drinking, I was wearing, and so on and so forth. So in order to do that, well, what kind of strategies could we use? Well, we could use 2 strategies. Well, the first thing, you will need to explain what is the difference between these 2. So for that, graphic organizers can be quite useful. Graphic organizers are things such as tables, charts, timelines, pictograms, concept maps, and so on and so forth. Now, past simple is used for situations where something happens at one moment in time. If you say, I went somewhere, the difference between that and I was going is that I was going is actually about I was in the middle of traveling somewhere. So in other words, the task is not done yet. Now you could present this as a timeline where one event is actually finished and happens very, very quickly at one point in time, for example 2 hours ago, and another one is stretched across a period of time. So that's how we could use graphic organizers to explain to the learner the differences between them. And from that you could potentially use darts. Now darts on our great ideas pages here, darts are activities, directed activities related to text. Now in this case, what we could do is to create a gap fill of some kind, and you could have a piece of text such as the one that the learner has written here, but this text would be filled either by brushed or was brushing, or went or was going. And so you could provide all of these verbs and expressions in a word box at the bottom of the page, and the learner would have to pick from those to complete the text. Now, going back to the descriptor B8, which was our target as well, starting to combine sentences to produce paragraphs. So we want the learner to start producing paragraphs. Well, one way to do that is, again, to go back to Darts. Obviously, paragraphs can be sequenced. In other words, you give the learner a text, again, to match what the learner was writing. Ideally, it would be in the past simple tense, or past tense more generally, and they have to order the paragraphs. Say there is a story, and they need to come up with the order of these paragraphs, and after this you can talk about why these paragraphs were ordered in the way that they were, and when we use paragraphs, how do we know that the next paragraph needs to be started. Another Darts activity could be, essentially indicates perhaps on the margin how many paragraphs you're expecting them to have, and what they would have to do is to either rewrite the text with the paragraphs, or simply to indicate within the text, for example, with a vertical line, where that paragraph would start. So, for example, say that you had a bit of a longer text than this, and you would write number 4 on the left here. Then the learner knows that they need to divide that text into 4 paragraphs, and off they go. And then they would have to explain to you why it is that they have divided this text in such a way. Another option as well is to use the learner's first language. This would be using translanguaging, which is harnessing the learner's first language, and to present the learners with a text in their own language and asking them to notice the paragraphs in there. And then you could ask, well, why are those paragraphs in there? And what do they do? What's their function? And then you could use that knowledge and transfer it to writing in the English language. So hopefully now you are better prepared and understand more about how to go about assessing the writing of a learner yourself.